Welcome in everyone, and thanks for joining us for the very first episode of the Guzman Boers and Angus podcast. I am your host, Jose Guzman. But before we get into the meat and potatoes here, I do want to do a quick introduction. I want to introduce this podcast one more time for those of you guys who haven't heard our trailer. And I want to do a quick introduction of who I am. I know I am behind the scenes of the Guzman's Boers and Angus podcast, as well as the YouTube channel, but I haven't really introduced myself at any point throughout my videos. I do have, I believe, an introductory article up on our website, guzmansboersandangus.com, but I do want to spend a few minutes here and introduce who I am. I know that way you guys can get a little understanding of where I'm coming from, what my plans are, and things of that sort. So, as previously stated, my name is Jose Guzman. I am currently 29, going on 30 years old, born and raised in Monterey County, located in the coast / central California. I've been here my entire life. Went to high school here. Went to college at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Majored in agriculture, specifically dairy science / animal science. And my passion for animals and livestock has been around since day one, as far as I can remember. Not only have I been raising various types of animals, specifically goats, I want to say for 15 years plus, but as you guys can tell, made my own YouTube channel and started my own podcast on them. I guess you can say that's how much I enjoy the passion, how much it affects my past, present, and future. And it's something that I see myself doing for quite some time. So that's a little bit on my backstory. Like I said, I've been doing this for a while, so I'm super excited to get this show rolling and continue and hopefully make this routine and a successful podcast. So that's a little bit about myself. Let's go ahead and introduce our podcast as far as what I see going forward, kind of what the expectations are, and hopefully get you guys excited for what this podcast can be. But before we can actually get into that, I do want to say, if you guys are new here, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It definitely helps out the channel quite a bit. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them down on the comment section of this podcast, or go ahead and throw them down on any of the previous videos that we currently have up on our channel. All right. With that out the way, let's go ahead and let's talk a little bit about what to expect from this podcast here. So, as previously mentioned, this will be an extension of our YouTube channel. So typically on our YouTube channel, we do talk a lot about Boers and Angus, specifically Boer goats. Actually, I have not talked about Angus yet, so we'll get into that a little bit later. But as previously mentioned, like I said, I want this podcast to be an addition to our regular YouTube videos, and in addition to our regular reels, I believe what we call them, actually shorts on YouTube. If you haven't followed us on Instagram, go ahead and follow us over there. We do post reels over there, and they're called shorts here on YouTube. So I guess since we're on the topic, go ahead and follow us on all of our social medias. Guzman Boers and Angus on all socials, Facebook, Instagram, and obviously YouTube here. But as I was talking, so on our YouTube channel, we do post a lot of general content on our Boer goats, but it's not always the best platform or the best source. The videos aren't always the best source to communicate a lot of educational material. Not only because it's hard to record different angles, especially when you're dealing with live animals, anything that's constantly moving. It's always hard to record videos, especially by yourself, and getting the right angles and the right, getting everything right so you can talk about exactly what you're talking about. An example, if you're talking about ear tagging goats, you definitely need more than one person to one person to be recording and the other person to actually be ear tagging that goat. So instead of having a full on, 15, 20-minute video of ear tagging goats, I can cut and clip maybe a 4 or 5 minute segment. And that way it's a lot easier for me in recording, and I can go ahead and do this podcast so I can further talk about things like that. So that's the type of things that I'm hoping this podcast will do. On top of that, I do want to expand and elaborate a little bit more on that, as far as using this podcast to go into further detail onto my background, give you guys updates and things of that sort. So this podcast, typically, I'm going to be hoping to reach the 30-minute threshold. So 30 minutes minimum, hopefully, up to about an hour, depending on the topics, depending on how things go. But hopefully, it'll be 30 minutes to an hour with either monthly or twice a month uploads. If it's twice a month, it'll be every other week. The reason I want to go that route is because I do want to include farm updates on here. And typically farm updates, if you do those every week, there's not too much to update you guys on, but usually about 2 weeks is what it gives more content per se. A lot more exciting things happen in 2 weeks versus 1 week. So that's kind of what to expect. And like I said, topics we'll be covering general goat husbandry, goat updates, and hopefully answering any questions that you guys might have. All right. So with that being said, let's kind of go into some of the topics we're going to be going into today. So I do want to touch a little bit about when I first got started raising goats. So kind of going back to who I am a little bit. So as I said, I'm 29 years old. I believe I got my first goat when I was either a freshman or sophomore in high school. So that puts me back, 14, 15 years old. That's when I first got my first goat. My parents, my dad and grandpa, have been raising goats for as long as they were able to do it. As soon as I got money, which was about 14, 15, working that summer jobs, that's when I managed to raise a couple. I want to say probably $100, $120. You're talking about when was this? 2009 maybe, 2009, 10. So goat prices were very much lower. So I want to say I probably spent about $100, $120 for a goat. Was a Boer goat cross. And ever since then, I've been in and out in a sense where I've always typically had a goat. Maybe there might have been a year or two when I was completely out, whether that was because I sold them or I might have lost them along the way. But going hard in to raising goats, I want to say it was probably about when I graduated from college. So about 2017, might have been a year before. It was probably my senior year in college, 2016, when I fully committed and started buying quality goats. So I always try to get the best goats that I could afford. So it did start off as commercial. So around 2017, 2016, I did buy maybe 2 or 3 commercial goats. At that point, they're probably a little bit more expensive, probably around 120 to 140. And that's how I started. Actually, I want to say I probably bought my first goats from my grandma. Or from when I started taking them more seriously. My grandma had some nice goats, and I think I purchased hers. And then from that point, I started adding a little bit more on the side. So I did that for a couple of years until I started getting more interested in it, and I started doing a little bit more research. When you start doing more research online, as well as Facebook, if you guys aren't familiar with Facebook pages, so I believe the one I'm into right now is either Boer Goats of California or Boer Goats of Central California. Hold on, just did a quick double check. It's actually called Boer Goats California. So depending on what state you're in, or what type of things you're into, Facebook pages or Facebook groups is a great thing to look into. Like I said, I'm from California, so I'm in Boer Goats of California. And going on these pages is when I first started to realize what quality Boer goats look like. So when people are selling their goats, You get some that will sell low quality stuff, but then you'll get to the stuff that sells high quality stuff. And then, so people were posting on this page here, and then I would click on the user that was posting it. I click on their user profile, and typically it would be like their business page, and their business page would link to either their website or their Instagram or something of that sort. And obviously, you go in a rabbit hole, you start researching, and then you find that some of these breeders have some really built, really stocky looking goats. And I was like, oh dang, these goats are crazy. And then you realize a lot of these breeders, they're not breeding for meat per se. They're breeding to produce other breeders. So they're constantly perfecting their lines, constantly working on what they produce. And some of these guys are also producing things for market, but also for show. And that's what kind of got me intrigued into these different types of things that you can, or different types of genetics and different purposes that these breeders are doing with these goats. So that kind of took me on a rabbit hole. That's also the first time that I saw a dappled goat, and I was like, "Dang, these goats not only look meaty, but they can also look nice. They're eye catching as well." So I started doing more research. I found some local breeders in my area, or actually, there was no one local in my area. There were some that were like 2, 3 hours away. And then I found one. And then what got me into actually purchasing my first one was I found someone that posted on the Facebook group. Like I said, went through who the page was, took me to their website, and their website was really nice. They actually posted on their website, they had their breeders. So they had their goat studs, and then they had their goat does as well. And then on their availability side, they had the offspring. So they had the dates, and they also had who the sire and who the dam was, the mom and dad per se. So that kind of got me into it, and I was like, oh dang. So I'm a little nerdy on genetics as well. So when I can see who the sire was and who the dam was, and see how they look like, and then see what they produced, that kind of got me a little bit more excited. So that's when I pulled the trigger. I contacted the lady that was selling, or from the website. For those of you guys who haven't been following my YouTube channel, it's actually Ponderosa Boer Goats. So they're from around Fresno County. They're about 2.5 hours away from me, depending on what route you take. So that's how I purchased my first registered goat. So that was actually my brown dappled buck. Long story on him. We'll talk to him. We'll talk about him a little bit later. But that's essentially how I got started in it. I actually ended up going back and buying some more goats from her. But to start off, like I said, that's how I located my first brown dappled buck. I went out there. He was 99% registered, and I actually bought him with paperwork without even knowing what that paperwork meant. So I think I bought him. Looked into what registering goats were. Like I said, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Just from doing my research on Facebook, I knew people wanted registered goats, because in the comments, they would always ask for, hey, what is he registered? What percentage is he? What line does he come from? Things like that. But without actually knowing what it was, I went ahead, bought him with papers. And I think once I bought him sometime like in March, February. I don't think I registered that goat under my name for probably about 5 months. That's how long it took me to realize what was going on, what the Boer goat was, or registration was. And that's how long it took me to commit to actually registering a goat. I knew I'd already spent that money, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to go that route. And then, 5 months later, I went ahead and went that route. And then once I committed to buying this goat, me and my dad actually went out there. We picked him up. And that's another story. So like I said, I run this business. It's a family business, so it's me and my dad. At the time, it was also my grandpa. He has since moved on, but me and my dad are still in it. And my dad, like I said, we were raising commercial goats. So at that time, it was I had to convince my dad a little bit. I guess you can see I had to convince him. It was my goat. I paid for it, but I had to inform him, hey, I just spent a lot of money on this registered goat. At the time, I paid over $1,000 for this goat. Not to like kind of say numbers, but so you can see how the difference was. So typically at this time, we were selling goats between 150 to 200. And then obviously you're doing 5 times that amount on buying this goat, or 4 times, somewhere around there. So it was a little bit like trying to convince my dad, hey, this is what I did. This is the route I want to go. Let's go and pick him up. Then he was open to it. He said, okay, we'll give it a go. See how it is. You spend a lot of money on it, but let's commit on it and let's go ahead and do it. So went ahead, we went out there, we picked them up, and this was actually during COVID time. So we had actually, this was when COVID was kind of becoming a big thing. We had just gotten our vaccines, so we did the first round of vaccines, and we had to do it for our work purposes. So we got our first vaccine, and actually later that day we drove out to Fresno and picked up the male goat. Picked it up from Shauna, I believe is her name, from Ponderosa Boer Goats. Really nice lady. Showed us around, showed us what she had, and I was super in love with that goat. Ended up not working a couple years later for that goat, but we'll talk about that a little bit later here. But that was essentially the whole purpose of this, kind of let you know how I got into it. I think about a couple months later, I went back to her and I bought a couple more does, unrelated. Bought some does from her, and then eventually, about a year after that, I found a different breeder in a different location. I bought Mooney, our black dappled Boer goat. But essentially, that's kind of the backstory onto how I got into registered goats. Long story short, what I found was people would pay more for registered goats. So if it takes the same amount of time, same amount of energy to raise a commercial and raise a registered, might as well go for the registered if you have the money up front to pay for it. At the end, having a registered goat, even if you don't sell it as registered, you can still sell them for the market purposes. So, like I said, if you have the money, I definitely recommend going for going towards the registered side. They are about 2-3 times more expensive to purchase up front, but once you have your breeding herd going, it's 100% worth it. So that's just the backstory on how I got started on this. I think I'll leave it at that, just so I have, don't go on rambling on. I don't want to get too personal on things, at least not yet. But I kind of wanted to give you guys the background on how I got started on goats and how I got started on registered goats. All right, so right about this time, we are approximately halfway through. I think it's probably going to be a shorter episode, but we're about halfway through, so let's go ahead and introduce our sponsor of the Guzman Boers and Angus podcast. It's sponsored by the very one and only Guzman Boers and Angus.com. That's right, we're sponsoring ourselves in this first episode. It's the way we roll. If you guys have not checked out our website, Guzman Boers and Angus.com, definitely recommend checking it out. As previously stated earlier, when I first got into Boer goats, I was intrigued by websites that posted their breeding stock as well as what their availability was. So I went ahead and I made GuzmanBoersandAngus.com. It's still progress. Definitely have not had enough time to work on it and post all of our breeders on there, but it is up there. I have already posted some of our breeders. There is also a segment or a section for articles. Essentially what those articles are going to be page long articles as far as what I do on certain topics, whether that is nutrition, what I feed. Another one may be how to prepare for breeding, how to hoof trim, things of that sort. Currently, do not have too many up there, but go ahead and check it out. There is a subscribe button you can put down there, so every time I do post something, you can go ahead and get that notified to your email, as well as what our next segment is going to be as far as the farm update. I will be posting some new availability up there. So once again, don't forget to check us out. GuzmanBoersandAngus.com. Once again, GuzmanBoersandAngus.com. And while we're on it, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and comment down below any questions you might have. Appreciate it. All right. Thank you to our sponsor, Guzman Boers and Angus.com. Wouldn't be able to do what we do without sponsors like that. All right. So let's get back into this podcast here. So I want to close this out, and I want to close out all of our podcasts in the future with this segment as far as kind of a farm update and and then kind of what I see myself doing, next time, what our goals are for the rest of the month type of thing. All right. So currently at the time of filming this podcast here, it is currently Sunday morning, August 6th. So I'll keep you guys updated based on dates. August 6th, 2023, depending on when you're listening to this. So I want to give you guys updates, like I said, either once to twice a month, and kind of give you guys updates in segments per se. So right now, I want to give you guys some updates from like the past couple months, or maybe the past month. We'll see how far we get into it. But I want to start off by mentioning, or since we're talking about how we got into it, we'll start off by how or why I had to sell my brown dappled goat. So earlier I discussed how I got my first registered goat from Ponderosa Boer Goats. So it was the brown dappled goat that me and my dad picked up out there by Fresno. All right, so we'll start off. I want to give you guys a little bit of a backstory. So like I said, we picked up this brown dappled registered goat. He was about 99% registered. I want to say we picked him up April 2020. I want to say it might have been 2021. I gotta check my records. All right, so just double checked. It was 2021. Gotta love the background editing. Double checked it, but it is. Picked him up around March 2021. So he was the brown dappled goat. Went ahead and I named him PDR1 LGS. Let's get started. So picked him up 2021. At that time, we still had a commercial buck in our herd. Because when I picked him up, he was only about 3-4 months old. So I knew he might not have been ready to breed our does. So we kept our commercial buck at that time. And what ended up happening was that our commercial buck ended up breeding all of our does. So LGS, the brown dappled goat, he had access to the does. So we threw him out there just in case he might have been able to do the job. But he didn't do what he was supposed to do just from physically looking at him. He wasn't interested, or he wasn't after the does. He was still fairly small, so give him the benefit of the doubt. But our commercial buck, he's the one that ended up doing the work. Confirmed that because the next kidding season, none of the goats came out dappled. If you guys watch our YouTube channel, you guys saw LGS, the brown dapple, and you can see he's a beautiful goat. He's not as built as I would have liked him to be, but he's well dappled where his kids would have had some sort of dappled marking as well. So that wasn't the case. None of the kids from that year ended up with any markings. They all came out traditional. So that was, we didn't see him mounting. We didn't see him do any, as far as like breeding behaviors. And when none of the kids came out dappled, we knew he didn't do the job. So that was kidding season 2022. So we ended up selling that commercial buck, got rid of him. Reason we got rid of him is because LGS, the brown dapple, we wanted to make sure that he can do what he's supposed to do. We didn't want him to compete with any other bucks, spend all this money on this guy. So, we need to use him. So we ended up keeping him, letting him go. So typically our kidding season is February, March or so. Sometimes it can start late January, but typically around February is when our kids start hitting the ground. At this time, we had our doubts on LGS. Not only did we not see him do any like breeding behavior, and typically a young buck will start showing that behavior. If you guys aren't familiar with when a buck is in rut, you can say he starts doing little things. He'll I'm not sure how much I can get into this, but they'll start peeing on themselves, and you can physically you can physically see, and plus they'll start smelling and stuff. The buck didn't do none of that behavior. And what I forgot to mention is when we first purchased them, one of the things I noticed was this guy's jewels, or his scrotum wasn't as big as you would have liked them to be. So, like I said, we've been in this business for 15 plus years, and you can tell a buck how they're supposed to hang. You can say his wasn't where we would have wanted him to be. So the fact that he didn't do the job his first year, he didn't show any signs, and he wasn't hanging where he was supposed to be. We kind of had our doubts. So at this point, it's early 2022. Me and my dad, we discussed it. We're like, okay, we'll leave him one more year, just kind of see what it is. We'll get rid of this commercial buck, let him run, give him our chance. But at the same time, we both kind of had our doubts whether or not he can get the job done. So at this time, what I did is I went back on Facebook Marketplace, or not Facebook, Facebook groups, Boer Goats of California, and I found a breeder which is a couple hours north of me. They're about 2-3 hours north of me, and that's where I ended up picking up our buck Mooney. So Mooney is a black dappled buck. I'll post up a picture on him if you're watching this on YouTube. And Mooney, he is way better than what LGS was, but the downside with Mooney is that he's only registered 87%. So LGS was 99%, Mooney is about 87%. But when you compare them side by side, Mooney is definitely the type of animal that we want to go for. He is broader, and he is just more meatier, way stronger. I'll throw a picture up here on YouTube here. He's also in all of our videos. So Mooney is definitely what we're looking for, although he's not as high percentage as we wanted. But ended up picking up Mooney, and we still had LGS at this time. So what we ended up doing was we separated Mooney with a select 2 does. So penned Mooney up with just him, 2 does. Mooney was probably 6-7 months at this time. What a buck should be able to breed. And he was with 2 younger does, so it should have worked out perfectly, which it did. If you guys saw our videos, he was able to get the job done, and he got both of those bred. So Mooney had his select does. LGS had the rest of the herd. Wanted to give him a chance, test them out. So at this time, it's probably about August 2022. So typically our breeding season, we start seeing breeding behavior sometime around August. So essentially around this time, but this time last year. So we saw LGS, the brown dappled buck. He was definitely showing breeding behavior. He was mounting. He was peeing on himself, doing all the things he was supposed to be doing. So I actually saw him after a couple of does. Saw him kind of chasing him. Saw him kind of mounting. I posted a video up on him on our YouTube channel if you guys want to go back and see it. I think it's titled "Signs Your Does in Heat." So our does were definitely in heat. He was mounting, or he was trying to mount. I didn't physically see him get the job done per se, but most of the time you never see it. You see the behavior, but you never actually see the finished product. But essentially, wrote down the dates. And there's like a calculator you can use online. Typically, it's going to be about 5 months. If I recall correctly, 5 months of gestation for goats. You can go online. There's a calculator. Throw in the dates that you think the buck was exposed, or dates that you saw the deed done. And what happens is they'll prompt you, generate a date. Your doe will kid around this week or so. I did that. And what ended up happening is that date came and went. A whole month came and went. And none of the does started having kids. So that's kind of one of the reasons we knew. At that point, I knew this guy's got to go. We got to sell him. But kind of backtracking a little bit, I saw the breeding behavior from LGS, around August of last year, 2022. And we actually have a neighbor, or he rents a little bit from us, and he has his own goats. So what ended up happening is that his male goat jumped the fence, and he was exposed to our does probably for like a day or two. Probably for like a day and a half maybe. And what ended up happening is we saw him, took him out, gave him back to the neighbor, and then about a week later he did it again, and he ended up doing it about 3 times. And the buck that our neighbor has, he's a naturally pulled buck. And guess the kids that we hit that hit the ground for us this year, 2023. They're all standard. They're either all solid brown or they're standard with the brown head, and about 75% of them are pulled. So that, and at this time, like I said, LGS was with them the entire breeding season. So it was LGS and the neighbor's buck that came through like 3-4 times. And all of our kids this year, 75% of them were pulled, and none of them came out dappled. The ones that were exposed to LGS. So it is what it is. I'm not sure if LGS, whether he was sterile, whether he didn't know how to do it, how to do the job, or some other factor. But none of the kids were his. So that was a little disappointing. Once we figured that out, we already had Mooney as a backup just in case. Once we confirmed it, ended up taking LGS to get sold. Now, I did give him the benefit of the doubt. I actually waited until our last doe kidded. Once the last doe kidded, none of them came out dappled. And like I said, 75% of them came out pulled, or naturally pulled. So once I saw that around this time, it's probably about April, May. And another factor that I forgot to leave out is that typically our breeding season, as I mentioned, is usually February. February, usually all of them kid. Sometimes it'll be early March. This year, because the buck didn't do what he was supposed to be doing, our kidding season backed about a month. So we started kidding the late February through March, and I believe our last one might have been end of March, beginning of April. So we were set back about a whole month, which, good or bad, this year we had a lot of rain, so it's good that our kids pushed out a little bit more. But it's also bad because these goats were not ready to go to market. But the goats, the kids or the does that Mooney was exposed to, they kidded right on time. They kidded around the middle of February. So we knew Mooney can do the job. So at this point, pulled the trigger. Ended up selling LGS, the brown dapple. I didn't want to sell him as a buck. One, because I don't want to have that reputation of selling a sterile buck. Obviously, you do not want to sell a buck knowing that he didn't get the job done for me. He should have. He had 2 opportunities. He whiffed on both of them. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. Maybe he just wasn't ready. But from my knowledge, he was sterile. So I went ahead and I sold him for meat. As previously stated, he's the first registered buck I purchased. He was 99%. I spent a lot of money for him. And at the time that I sold him for less than what I would have sold a standard meat goat. Meat goats here go for around $200. I sold them for just a little bit under. Now that was a big hit, and I was a little hesitant on selling them just because I knew I was gonna take a big hit, and I kind of thought maybe we should keep him as a mascot. Reason I thought that is because he was a big hit on our YouTube channel. Hit pictures or videos with him up there got like the most views. He got the most attention. But at the end of the day, we're trying to do a profitable farm here, and if he ain't producing, then you got to get out. Especially because California, we don't have the best grasses, we don't have the most rain. We're dealing with the drought. Besides this year, last year it was quite a bit of a drought. It was a little bit harder to feed. And like I said, there's no need to have somebody or a goat like that that's going to be constantly eating and not producing. So made a decision, cut our losses, cut our ties, sold them for meat. Or actually, I didn't sell them for meat. I sold them to kind of a broker, you can say. Told him what was going on. Told him he wasn't breeding material. What he decided to do with that's out of my hands. But I sold them. Someone might already have them. Someone might have purchased them for breeding purposes. I don't know. But I sold them to be sold as meat. So if someone out there has them, let me know. But I definitely did not work for me. So at that point, cut ties with them, and then ended up just keeping Mooney full time as our main breeding buck. Currently, he's the only buck that we have for breeding, and essentially that kind of brings us up to present day. So, like I said, it's August 6th. Our breeding season typically starts mid-August to late August. And as of right now, I've actually seen Mooney start getting into condition. Like I said, there's certain signs that you see when a buck goes into rut. And Mooney's definitely been showing that. So I don't have a doubt that Mooney's going to get the job done. Currently, we run somewhere between 15 does. I got to count them. Actually, might be a little bit more. But typically right around 15. Last year, he got the job done with... so he started off with 2 does, and then we ended up adding a third one. And he actually got all 3 of them bred. So I have no doubt that Mooney's going to get the job done and produce some kids for us this year. And what we actually also ended up doing is we ended up putting an extra 2 wires where our neighbor's goat jumped the fence. So hopefully he doesn't jump the fence this year. If we do, obviously we'll see it put on the calendar. But I'm more than certain that Mooney's going to get the job done. Have you guys seen our videos and you guys have seen Mooney, then you guys know what I'm talking about when I say that Mooney is built. He's stocky. I don't have a scale, but I'm willing to bet that Mooney's pushing 250, 300. He's also pretty friendly. The person that I got him from, he wasn't a bottle baby, but he was definitely handled on a regular basis. So Mooney is definitely pretty friendly. He's not aggressive at all. I can go up to him, I can pet him and stuff like that, and he'll come to me. Not overly aggressive, not overly, you don't want a male goat that's going to be too confident. I can still clap my hands, and he knows to back up. But Mooney is when you picture a stud, a goat stud, that's exactly what Mooney is. So even if the neighbor's goat did end up jumping the fence, Mooney being driven, having that drive of being in rut or in season, there's no doubt in my mind that Mooney's going to put that other goat in his place. That's how much confidence I have on Mooney. And just the sheer size of a Mooney is. And Mooney currently is a year and a half. He'll be 2 years in December. So he's not fully grown yet, and he's already... I have no doubt that he should be able to handle his own. So that's currently where we are right now. Breeding season should be starting here within the next week or two. At the very latest, should be September. Like I said, we live in a fairly hot environment where our summers typically, you're about 100 degrees every single day. So sometimes that has a factor on our breeding season. Sometimes these does don't start cycling until it starts cooling down to about the mid 80s or so. So usually that's end of August, second week of September. So it should be within the next few weeks here. We should start seeing some breeding behavior and actually some mounting. There was a couple of does that missed last year. Like I said, LGS kind of threw a curveball for us. So there was about 2 or 3 does that didn't get bred last year. 2 of them being the black alpine does, and one of them being one of my registered does as well. All 3 of them missed. So I believe they're going to be the first ones to come into heat. And one of them or 2 of them might have actually done it. I'm not sure. He was after them, but it wasn't like a full after them. It was just like, hey, what you doing type of thing. So we'll see. Like I said, I don't preg check my does. I just wait, when kidding season starts, and you can start noticing when they start bagging up. So we'll see. But I believe we should start having kids normal sometime around in February. The only thing that I'm a little hesitant on is because our kidding season was pushed out. Some of these does still have kids on them, so we're gonna fully start weaning here in the next week or two. The fact that they still have kids on them is what I'm a little hesitant on. just because they might cycle a little bit later. But majority of them have been weaned. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'll definitely keep you guys posted. Like I said, that's definitely the purpose of this podcast, is to be able to do things like that. So super excited to see how that goes as far as Mooney and breeding. All right, and I'm sure as you guys can tell, my voice is starting to go a little bit. I'm not used to speaking for long periods of time. But before we close this podcast, I do want to give one more update, and that update is going to be on the 3 bucks that we will have available here within probably the next 2 weeks. The 3 bucks that we decided to keep intact are going to be the 3 bucks or 3 bucks that were sired by Mooney. So as you guys heard me speak, Mooney did have access to three does, and from those 3 does, we had 3 quality bucks that we decided to leave intact. 2 of them are commercial, and 1 of them is registered. I actually just filed the paperwork for him, so I should be getting his papers in the mail probably within the next week. He's already up on the ABGA website, so he's already registered at 93%. His paperwork should be getting here within the next week or so, depending on how fast they mail it out. But he's registered 93%. The other 2, like I said, are commercial. 1 of them is solid black. The second one is like a brownish, light brown cream color. I call him cappuccino. And the third one is a brown, traditional headed dapple. So he's solid white. His head is brown with dapples. He's registered as GUZB, Guzman Boers Simba. If you guys go on our channel, you guys can see shorts of them, and I believe they were featured in our last video as well. So all those 3 will be available here within the next few weeks. They will be available, like I said, probably the next few weeks. I'll probably post them up on our website. I'll put them up on Boer Goats of California. Because they are bucks, they're going to go a little bit higher than what we typically sell our meat goats for. Simba definitely will go for registered price, but all those prices and all the information will be posted up on our website, GuzmanBoersandAngus.com. And I'll definitely keep you guys updated either with the video or on the podcast in case anyone is interested. But with that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this first podcast. I don't believe we reached the full 30 minutes, but I got to get used to this too. It's a lot of talking. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment any questions you guys might have, anything that could be Boer Goat related, any questions you have about me. I do want to keep my life private per se, but if you have any general questions, leave it in the comments down below. Subscribe, hit that like button, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Appreciate it.